Are the BUCS actually Super Bowl contenders? It's our NFC South preview on the Shots and Near NFL podcast from FTN Fantasy. It is July 24th, 2025. I am Aaron Schatz. You know me as the DVOA guy from FTN Fantasy. He is Mike Tanier. You know him from his Substack at miketanier.substack.com. And we are here today to talk about the NFC South. Before we do that, of course, we have to do the latest news.
Yes.
Which is that apparently someone stepped on Justin Fields' toe. Well, all these reports this morning about Justin Fields being carted off the field, there's two things to remember about the early part of training camp. One is that this is when a lot of injuries happen because guys are not in shape yet.
Right.
Contradictory. Two, this is when a lot of injuries are overblown because if it's the early days of training camp, it's easy to bring the cart out for anything.
Right.
And it turns out that apparently someone stepped on his toe, and it doesn't seem like it's a major injury.
That's good to hear. Last I checked, I was working off of Zach Rosenblatt's reporting that he was carted off. So it's the Jets. I always assume the absolute worst.
Reminder that if you are watching us live, which we're doing at 11 a.m. Eastern time through the off season with these previews, you can make comments on YouTube and talk to us and ask us about the teams we are covering. And today it is the NFC South, which is mostly won by the Buccaneers, although not as high a percentage as I expected. We end up with the Buccaneers winning in 53% of our simulations, the Falcons in 32%, the Saints in 8%, and the Panthers in 6%.
So there's a 14% margin for error is what you're telling me.
Anything can happen, man. It's the NFL.
I know you did not rerun them when the Honey Badger retired, but did you?
No, I haven't rerun them yet for Matthew retiring. It's probably lower for the Saints now.
Right, by about like a fraction of a percent when the 30-something-year-old Swiss Army knife safety retires. By the way, I ran the All Saints dead cap team. We had to update that. Okay. So the All Saints dead cap team consists of, one moment, please, while I pull it up. Derek Carr at quarterback, Jameis Winston at quarterback, Jamal Williams at running back, Michael Thomas, still dead cap at wide receiver, Ryan Ramczyk on the offensive line, Tano Passignon on the defensive line, Marshawn Lattimore at cornerback. Now we have add the Honey Badger at defensive back. And let's throw Taysom Hill on there. He's essentially dead cap at this point. If you built a team around those guys, what would their percent chance be of winning the NFC South, assuming like Carr got healthy?
Right, or Ramczyk. I mean, the Saints cap. We'll start with the Saints because we've started with the Saints. The Saints cap, the top four, if you assume that Taysom Hill is going to be injured for most of the year,
yes,
the Saints cap, the top four guys are not going to play for them this year, as well as guy 7 and guy 9, and that doesn't even include Matthew.
Yes. Right. So and he would be somewhere in that list. And then when you look at the other guys, I don't know if you included Taysom there. Remember Taysom at an ACL?
Yeah, Taysom is third at $18 million on the cap.
Right. You have to go down to like the 10th or 11th guy to get somebody under 30 who we could say is still like reasonably in their prime and that they're paying. And that when you get that down that far, I think it's Ruiz or somebody like that. You're talking about somebody who on a playoff team would be like the 22nd best player or something like that.
So, yeah, like it's not looking good for the Saints. I mean, they added the quarterback, but it's like a 26-year-old rookie quarterback in Tyler Shuck. New safeties, a couple of new defensive tackles, Devon Godshaw, Jonathan Bullard, Brandon Cooks is back, but he's still got some talent left, but it just looks like a mess because of all those years of pushing things on the cap to the next year and pushing things on the cap to the next year and pushing things on the cap to the next year. And it finally hit a wall last year.
Yeah. And folks, I have like a cabal of Saints fans who follow me, who our cap is still cap deniers. And one of their theories was that this really is not about cap, or it's tangentially about cap, or the cap problem is the effect, not the cause, that the real problem was bad drafting. So when we wrote the chapter, we talked a little bit about the draft situation of the Saints. So while we always focus on the cap, let's not lose sight of the fact that the Saints have done some wacky things in the draft. That's absolutely accurate. Like all the third-round quarterbacks that they kept getting, the number of trade-ups that they did in the past to trade up to get guys that turned into people like Trevor Penning. So that this is a team that not only doesn't draft spectacularly, but doesn't draft a lot. They're usually out there with only 4 picks or 5 picks because they traded some picks away. Then they spend one of them on a quarterback, but not like a marquee quarterback. So it's a roster that's really misbuilt in a variety of ways.
They did have a first, a second, and a third this year.
Like that's like the first time in forever.
So they did have the top 3. Kelvin Banks, the left tackle out of Texas. He's their new left tackle. And Tyler Shuck, the quarterback. And then a safety named Jonas Sanker came in the 3rd round.
Right. And they've been drafting offensive linemen early for years. And it's more or less, I mean, the offensive line isn't like one of the weaknesses of the team, but there are big strikeouts like Penning in that respect. They're moving Penning, I believe, inside the guard to put Banks there. That's not the plan. Shuck, and again, he's their QB1 right now, is really like the spiritual descendant of Spencer Rattler and Ian Book and some of these other compromise solution quarterbacks where I don't project this guy to do anything except be kind of like a Desmond Ridder type who you give him the starts and he goes out there and he makes bulk stacks and you win 5 games.
I talked to a Saints fan who thought maybe Rattler would win the job, and I said that's not something to be excited about.
Right. I think it's accurate. Because Rattler will go out there. He has these little streaks where he's exciting. Rattler had a better college career than Shuck. Let's put it that way.
Let's talk about the good team, which is the Tampa Bay BUCS. I'll take a quick fantasy question, which is related. Brian McKilla wants to know who we would keep in a PPR league, Jonathan Taylor or Bucky Irving. And Bucky, are you saying Bucky?
The winter soldier, baby.
Yeah, receiving, man. He makes the receptions. So I would definitely, Jonathan Taylor's very talented, but I would keep Bucky Irving. So the thesis of the Tampa Bay chapter is that we need to take this team seriously, that they're not just bumbling to the top of a bad division, but that they have real talent.
Yeah, and I think that reflects all over the place. This is something I was saying last year. We kind of joke about the BUCS. Oh, the BUCS are getting the automatic bid. They're UNLV in the 1980s or whatever. They still have this group of guys with Super Bowl rings. They still have a few guys who predated Brady, but they're still in their primes. This isn't like a Saints situation where they're playing out the string. Mike Evans still in his prime, Vita Vea, some of these other guys, and they have drafted pretty well over the last couple of years.
The negative for the BUCS now is injuries, as apparently Tristan Wirfs is out the first few weeks and will be replaced by Charlie Heck. That is a real downgrade. And Godwin apparently had a second surgery, so now there are some questions about him.
Right.
Those are not good pieces of news going into a new season.
No, Wirfs is going to miss the first couple of weeks of camp, or
no, he'll miss the first couple of weeks of the season.
That is significant. Obviously, they've been drafting for years to rebuild on the receiving core. They drafted receivers this year. They've got guys like McMillan. They have Akuba from Ohio State. They can survive early in the season without Godwin. Wirfs, that is a major hit.
It's mostly the same players as last year, though, because for all these previews, I've been writing who's in and who's out.
Right.
And the main outs for Tampa are Jordan Whitehead, the safety, KJ Britt at linebacker, and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, the edge. That's about it.
Right.
And the main ins are Hassan Reddick and draft picks.
Right. And Reddick is there and sounds like he's happy. He's with the program this time. And also the retentions. That was the big story at the beginning of the offseason. That was kind of the big story I had to build the chapter around, where the retentions are David and Evans and Godwin and a lot of these second-tier guys where you have a roster coming back that got to double-digit wins, got to the playoffs, has won playoff games certainly in the past against surprised opponents, including the Eagles. And these aren't guys who are falling off a cliff at this point in the career. They're still very productive players.
Unless the big problem is that they lost their offensive coordinator again.
Yeah.
But they lost their offensive coordinator before last year, and the new offensive coordinator was very good. So they lost this time. They lost an offensive coordinator, but the talent is still there on the offense. Mike Evans is still Mike Evans, and we talked about Bucky Irving, and Mayfield is good. And so I think their offense should be fine.
Offense should be fine. Defense should be fine. Liam Cohen really was a clever schemer. I don't know anything about the Grizzler, their new offensive coordinator, Grizzard the Wizard Lizard. But again, they've overcome this. So I'm excited. Of course, I wrote about the punters. I just got an update about their current punter, Riley Dixon. They had all kind of punters last year, and I'm told that new punter Riley Dixon has not flashed yet.
So tough punting for the guess they're just going to have a good offense and not have to worry about punting that much.
I wrote about that at the Two Deep Zone. The punter situation last year was completely foobar for the BUCS, but that's like the Bills' problem now because they took Canarda.
So Atlanta comes out as basically average. I'm a little surprised that they win the division in so many simulations, but it makes some sense in that, I mean, the BUCS could falter, but also, look, the Atlanta offense could be very good.
Yes.
There's a lot of talent here for the Atlanta offense. We don't know what Penix can be, but he could be really good. Drake London is really good. Bijan Robinson is really good. Offensive line is good. Like, Darnell Mooney is an underrated wide receiver too. Like, there is some good stuff going on. Their defense is poor.
Right. Their defense is poor. I could see a lot of volatility, variance in the offense based on what Penix does.
The defense is heavily dependent on the rookie edge rushers, right?
Yes.
They brought in Leonard Floyd, but they also have Jalen Walker and James Pierce, the 2 first-round edge rushers. And we can talk about, did they make the right move by trading next year's pick to get the second edge rusher this year? But they have him. So when we talk about whether they're going to win games this year, he's there.
He's there. But in the past, in our projection system, early round edge rushers, they don't usually have this high.
No, it's kind of the defense. The early round defensive players have a little bit more of a trackable effect than the early round offensive players. So it is good to draft defensive players early.
Okay.
At any position. So the fact that they took 2 in the first round is good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, what else do they have other than AJ Terrell?
Right. And the thing I always say about this team, even guys like Terrell, when's the last time you saw the Falcons in a big game against a real contender having a big win? They're in this NFC South world. They don't make the playoffs. So, like, we don't even know guys like Terrell or Drake London, who I think are good ball players, don't get me wrong. We've never seen them out there against the Bills having a big game, or against the 49ers when the 49ers are healthy having a big game. It's like, yeah, they really had that great game against, the Panthers or something like that. So it's hard to even judge them at that level.
Yeah. I mean, Grady Jarrett is gone now. Justin Simmons was there last year. The center, Drew Dahlman.
Yeah, his backup was good, though. News.
But it mostly seems like it's the same stuff. Like, this is the Falcons. Like, the Falcons are the Falcons are the Falcons are the Falcons.
The second-year quarterback who didn't play last year, who's getting in the best situation, is probably McCarthy. But the second best situation is probably Penix, because you're right. You do have this variety of guys around him. You have a really good offensive line. I think that is a really strong offensive line. But now it's up to him to take that next step.
A couple of Saints questions here from the crowd. How many wins do we have the Saints projected at? I believe the Saints are projected somewhere around 6.
Which is, I think, really close to the Vegas line.
Which is close to the bottom.
Yes.
Not liking the Saints this year. Brian McKilla wants to know, is Chris Olave a value in drafts this year or someone you're staying away from? I would say something in the middle. It's not a great situation, but I am genuinely a believer that even if the quarterbacking is bad, the wide receiver 1 is going to get his.
Yeah.
That it's the wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 that suffer from bad quarterbacking, plus interceptions and sacks. Like, it's not that Olave is going to get his yardage. So I wouldn't be tending towards him in fantasy, but I wouldn't be staying away from him.
Injuries with him are a worry. He's a concussion.
Yes, the concussions are a worry.
Yeah. So
because
I don't know what's
another one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know what the staying away from versus picking is. I mean, it probably depends on your league whether he's a guy who slips or not. Because if he's starting to slip, it's like I grab him, but I'd be worried about prioritizing him more because of the injuries than what Aaron's saying here. Because somebody's going to get the ball.
Fraser Lamont says, I know the Saints have a lenient schedule. I still think 6 wins is a generous projection. First of all, the entire division has a lenient schedule, in part because they play each other.
Right.
Second of all, the Saints do have the easiest schedule of the 4 teams. They're at 31st in schedule. Remember that the projections are very conservative, and they do tend to group around 8.5.
Right.
So when I say the Saints have a 6-win projection, that's close to the bottom of the league. And the top of the league is the Bills at 11.9.
Right.
We know that somebody will win 13 or 14 games, and we know that somebody will win 3 or 4, but it's really hard to guess which teams that's going to be. Michael Allen Brewer says there has to be a temptation for the Saints to tank for Legacy Manning. Well, here's the thing. Do we know Manning is coming out next year? Right? Like, we don't know how good he's going to be this year. If he's not as good as people think he might be, why not stay another year, make more NIL money, and get better? I don't know if it's necessarily the case that the Saints are going, that Manning is going to come out next year's draft. And the other thing is, guess what? Guess who one of the top quarterback prospects in next year's draft is?
Yes.
Garrett Nussmeier.
Yes.
Garrett Nussmeier's father is Doug Nussmeier. Guess what Doug Nussmeier's job is? He is the offensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah. And also, by the way, the Saints are going to tank for the Legacy Manning, and so are the Giants, and so are the Colts. And now there's a lot of talk about how the Browns have an inside track that's something that they want to pursue, which makes sense. So,
right, although in that case, that's not a Legacy Manning. That's just help.
Right. But other teams will be screaming help. I'll tell you what, though, when you talk about that first overall pick, if I was making a first overall pick bet, like on the clock, fewest wins, I couldn't find anything on DraftKings right now. It'll probably come out. The Saints would be the team I would look at to get that if I'm picking a team. And that's based in part on like the Honey Badger saying enough's enough. I'm retiring right now. It's a culture that suggests people are going to be like abandoning the ship.
Last year, even though the Giants were not at the bottom of our projections, I said the Giants were the worst team in the league because they were not only really bad, they had no hope.
Right.
This year, the Saints are not at the bottom of our projections, but I feel that the Saints are the worst team in the league because they have no hope. The Carolina Panthers are the team we haven't talked about yet. Right. I think the upside for the Carolina Panthers, despite the fact that our projections are very down on them, I think the upside for the Carolina Panthers is a lot stronger than the upside for the Saints. There is hope in Carolina. There is no hope in New Orleans.
That's true. There are a lot of young players on that team that could rally and make a run. I'm not sanguine on them either. I'm not a believer in it, but I can see it happening. I can see it happening for the Saints.
I mean, I've already had people say to me, why do you have the Panthers so low? They were better in the second half, et cetera, et cetera. First of all, the improvement in the second half that Young had was not to greatness.
Right.
It was like to kind of averageness.
Right.
And second of all, I've written about this numerous times in the past. As much as we believe logically that the second half of the season means more than the first half of the season when you're projecting the future, it really doesn't, unless it's specifically about a change in quarterback or specifically about an injuries. The fact is there are quarterbacks who improve in the second half, even young quarterbacks who improve in the second half of the season, and you think young quarterback improving in the second half of the season, that rolls over, and it just doesn't necessarily roll over. And so that is not a reason to believe that the Panthers are going to be really good. And when you look at the whole year, they were bad. And in particular, we can talk about Young all we want. The defense was really bad. And there's not a lot of reason. Like, they got some guys. Bobby Brown, Tershawn Wharton.
Moring.
They got Trevin Moring.
Yeah.
They drafted Nick Skirton, who Saxier likes. And they drafted Princely Uman-Malin, who you like, but Saxier does not like. So they drafted a couple edges, and they signed some dudes. None of those guys are like, that's going to make us a reasonable defense now.
Right, and the outlaw Josie Jewell's already out for the year. He suffered some kind of injury. That's one of the guys that they would probably have been counting on. When we talk about that second half, let's just go over again. The second half of last season, the big improvement was win over the Saints, who are terrible, overtime win over the Giants, who are terrible. Then tight loss against the Chiefs when the Chiefs were playing everybody kind of tough. Overtime loss to the Buccaneers, okay, fine. Tight-ish loss to the Eagles, which the Eagles were kind of getting in their own way a lot, and there were a bunch of like 4th and 25 completions or by Young. Lost 30-14 to the Cowboys without Prescott or anybody else at that point. Then overtime win over the Cardinals, who are mediocre and were flatlining. 48-14 loss to the Buccaneers when the Buccaneers got serious. And then an overtime win in Week 18 to the Falcons. You're looking at a bunch of overtime wins against weak teams, non-playoff teams. And then you're looking at a couple big hammer losses. And then a couple of games against teams like the Chiefs and the Eagles where you look at it and say, I think those teams were playing with their food a little bit. This wasn't some glorious uptick.
Yeah, the Philadelphia one in particular, I think, tells more of a story about the Eagles. It helped tell the story from the NFC East episode.
Right.
That the Eagles' offense was not as good as people are thinking that it was because it was not as good as it was in the Super Bowl. And a good example of that is that they only narrowly beat the Panthers, who were the worst defense in the league.
Right. And I remember, guys were throwing stuff at the TV at the bar when Bryce Young's in the end zone, in his own end zone at 3rd and 15 or whatever. And he scrambles away from Carter and a couple of guys, throws one to Thielen, I think, and gets the first down. Yeah, good for Bryce Young. He has reached the point where he can do things like this occasionally. This is not the repeatable, sustainable thing that suggests this team is built, something that is now going to vault into the playoffs.
Michael Allen Brewer has an interesting question, which is that second half not mapping to the next year makes sense, but do second halves map to second halves? For example, teams that always seem to lose in the playoffs. Is there a trend where teams that struggle in the second half of the season struggle year after year after year? Now, here's the interesting team to actually talk about that with is a team we're going to cover next week, which is the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, yeah.
Because for the last 5 years, the Arizona Cardinals have been much better in the first half of years than the second half of years. And that is with opponent adjustments from DVOA. So that's not related to what their schedule says. Right. And it's an interesting thing to look at before we do next week's episode. Is there something real? Do we think there's something real there with Arizona that they constantly fall apart in the second half of the season? I'll look into that.
That's tricky because they changed coaches and its problem persisted. There's with and without Kyler Murray in the data. It's a hard one to project, but maybe there is something there.
Yeah, but the Panthers being better in the second, it's not that the Panthers have for the last 4 or 5 years been always better in the second half of the season. That's not a thing either. No. So, it's not the most exciting division. We've kind of gone through it real fast, and I feel oh, wow, what more do we want to say? But here's the thing, the Buccaneers seem to have it fairly well in hand. Obviously, look, there's always variation in the NFL, and Atlanta could have a good offense, and if anybody comes up, it's probably Atlanta. But there was very little change on these teams. There's not a lot of in and out free agency wise. There are some interesting draft picks, but not a lot of in and out free agency wise. It feels like for the most part, this division is running it back the way they ran it back last year, except the Saints will be healthier, but worse.
Yeah. Buccaneers over 10.5. Do you take it at plus 165?
It's not ridiculous.
Yeah, I would look at
ridiculous.
I would look at Werf, and I got to look at the early part of the schedule, and I'm not going to do that right now. I'd have to ruminate on it. I think that's perfectly reasonable. There are a couple other props out there, but of course, you never bet on the Falcons. So your mileage varies on whether you want over under 6.5 or 5.5 for teams like the Saints.
Never bet on the Falcons. Never bet against the Falcons. Right. Never bet in games that involve the Falcons at all.
Right. Try not to say Falcons if you can get away with it.
That is our best advice for everybody.
A ladder could fall on your head if you say Falcons too often.
All right, that does it for the NFC South. Thank you, everybody, for listening to a little bit of a shorter episode, but we'll be back next week with the NFC West and a guest, which will be Brian Knowles, who wrote the NFC West chapters in the book, and that is a very good division, and there is a lot to talk about with the NFC West. Don't forget to check out the Substack, miketanier.substack.com, and don't forget, if you haven't bought the Almanac yet, ftnfantasy.com/almanac for the Almanac, and it is now on Amazon as well if you are somebody who wants the print copy. Ours are on the way, and you can get yours too by searching Amazon for FTN Football Almanac 2025. And of course, I am all over all your favorite podcasts promoting the book. So I did Mina Kimes to do AFC East preview. I'm doing Greg Rosenthal's podcast later today. I'm doing the Wharton Moneyball next week. So Jarrett Bailey's podcast, I'm doing a ton. So if you want to hear me talk, You have many, many opportunities besides this.
Cutting this one a little short so we can talk to the bigwigs. I see how it is.
We will talk to you next week, 11 a.m. next Thursday, NFC West. Until then, he's Mike Tenier. I'm Aaron Schatz. So long, everybody.